The other thing I wanted to bring up right now isn't so much a policy issue, but just a broader domestic economic issue going forward, and one that I think your Marxist or Marxian, you've been using that word, analysis might be really helpful with. It also connects to DeepSeek, automation, electric vehicles, and that is the role of advancements in AI in the competition between China and the United States, and also just the overall health of our domestic workforce.
I don't know quite how to get at what it is I would want to say about that. China has demonstrated now, and I believe this is true to almost every reasonable person, whether they like China or not, whether they support what China is or don't. They have demonstrated that economic growth can be achieved faster in their kind of system than it can in any other kind. And that is a momentous, that's a momentous achievement. Over the last 30 to 40 years, they have consistently grown, as measured by their GDP, 2 to 3 times faster than the United States. I must remind people, even though they hate to hear it, that before this speedy growth, the Soviet Union accomplished speedy growth. Not as fast, but speedy growth. So that the painful reality, so painful it can't be spoken, is that the 20th and 21st centuries demonstrated the growth potential and the growth actuality most effectively in the Soviet Union and China. If you look at the Soviet Union as the first experiment in what I'm about to describe as their economic system, and China as the second, right? Russia starts in 1917, China in 1949. That's quite a difference. But by now we have 70 years, roughly 70 years of the Soviet Union, and now 70 years of China. And the Chinese growth faster, more spectacular than the Russian. The Russians were a system of state enterprises throughout industry and a growing proportion of state enterprises in agriculture. And very little scope for capitalist enterprises throughout that time. Not zero, that's an American fantasy, but small. China is completely different. China made a decision after Mao to become a hybrid, to be partly state-owned and operated enterprises, half, and the other half private capitalist enterprises, both Chinese and external allowed. So that I think it's fair to say that China represents a hybrid trying to combine both the benefits of a private capitalism model United States and of a state-owned and operated enterprise system, example, the Soviet Union. They really are a 50-50 split. With the hybrid of these two systems overseen by a communist party and a powerful state apparatus controlled by that party. And they've achieved really an unspeakable story Let me give you one statistic just to put in your head. The GDP of the United States, 28 trillion bucks, more or less. The GDP of Russia, our former arch enemy, today is $3 or $4 trillion. No content, nothing. And that was always true. Only in the Cold War legacy mentality of the United States did Russia loom, silly economic nonsense. Anyway, that's not true with China. China's GDP now, 18, 19, 20 trillion dollars. Way different from Russia, and equally so from anywhere else. Britain's GDP, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 trillion, something like that. Very small.
Bigger than Russia, though.
What?
Bigger than Russia.
Probably bigger than Russia, yeah. And Russia fighting NATO means Russia's fighting Britain, France, Germany, Italy is refusing. That's different. But look what China has done. China was one of the poorest countries on the planet in 1949 and is now number 2. Unquestionably number 2 after the United States, and each year closing the gap. That is an astounding achievement. It is very, very hard for me not to dwell on it. But one of its components, and one of the reasons it has the achievement, will take us to the technology issue. A powerful Communist Party ruling a powerful state apparatus, supervising this hybrid, can do something quickly and efficiently that the United States either can't do or can't do quickly and efficiently. It can mobilize the entire economy to achieve certain priorities. It can mobilize the government sector in its ways and the private sector in its ways. It can force them to collaborate and coordinate so that the resources each has are brought together to attack a problem. It does not respect private profit as the priority, which is what happens here. It does not believe the private has to be given primacy in some sense, as happens here. It doesn't have a government filled with people who believe that the private is in some sense the more important, the more patriotic, the more deserving, the more what. It doesn't have any of that. In fact, it has the other. One of the elements of socialism or communism that has a real effect here is that the people involved in the public sector believe in it, respect it, even value it higher than the private. In recent years in China, you have seen programs punishing leading private capitalists, Jack Ma and others like that, kind of dressing them down, in some cases imprisoning them, but mostly culturally saying, you are not, yet we will let you be a billionaire. We will. And we will let you run your business. But when you overstep in this hybrid, we're going to give you a slap on the wrist or worse, because you're not, and there's enormous support in the public sector for that. Americans have a very hard time grasping how different this is.